Assalamualaikum. Today we are together with my dear brother Usama Ghanem'i, who is the first person actually in the UK's history to be indefinitely suspended from a UK university because of his Palestinian activism for Palestine. And here's my dear sister Zahra Farooque'u, who has allegedly walked into an Israeli weapon factory and harmed the weapons that will be used for genociding Palestinians. And she has been in the prison for 15 months.
Palestine Action came to prominence with high-profile direct action on sites like the Royal Air Force Base at Brize Norton and the UK subsidiary of Israeli arms manufacturer Elbit Systems. After the group's banning in July last year, the act of publicly supporting it itself became a crime, liable to a jail sentence of up to 14 years. There were dawn raids by police on members of affiliated groups. 23 activists remain on lengthy remand, some of them having spent weeks on hunger strike.
Briefly introduce yourself to us.
So my name is Usama Ghanem'i, as you know. I'm Egyptian, and I came into the United Kingdom around 4 years ago to study international relations in King's College London. And yeah, that is, I think, the most short, precise information. We knew each other because we met in the New Zealand encampment on the 2nd of May 2024.
Young people are being influenced by those who are professional at radicalizing our children.
People that are aggressive, that are spewing hate.
It is raw hatred towards Jews.
Anti-Semitic mobs have taken over leading universities. This is reminiscent of what happened in German universities in the 1930s.
We are not an authoritarian nation where we silence people or squash dissent, but order must prevail.
Those individuals need to be deported immediately.
There is an appropriate time for the National Guard.
This may be Biden's Vietnam.
But the sad part about it is, if the numbers are changing, they're having an impact.
Yeah, that's the briefest introduction I can think of. And I know Zahra because we met in the same place.
Yeah, so we all met on the same day. And yeah, second day with Zahra.
My name is Zahra Farooque'u. I met you both in the UCL encampment, and the reason I ended up there was because I used to go to UCL and I graduated in 2021 with a degree in history. And I'm seeing what's happening in Gaza, and when the university encampment started, I saw it as an effective way to sort of join a wider movement. And then the rest is history.
Yeah. And so,
how did you join the UCL encampment?
How did I join the UCL encampment? So we were going to the protests every week, and volunteering in the national marches and everything. But I think everyone figured that they need to do more at some point, because this is not it doesn't show all of our power. We all, I think at some point we all figured out that we have more power than just going to the protests. And we were all students back then, so I think encampments was a very impactful tool back then for the students. But I'm curious about how you guys can, did you have any kind of mental barriers before joining the encampment? Because we know that many people actually couldn't take that decision to join in, and there were some threats in terms of our educations and our status in terms of international students. So did they ever came up before you decided? Or I'm sure for everyone there were many let's say threats. And I'm curious how you guys came over.
I think, it's the interesting part. I think, subhanAllah, we spoke about this, I think, many times when we met in the encampment, is the fact that in many different ways, I think our lives have been building up to a moment where it's preparing us, not necessarily only to meet each other and to be in an active place in the encampment and take an active role into at least trying to stop the genocide. But I think if it was a scene number one, the genocide happens, and scene number two, we join the encampments, it wouldn't make any sense. Because as you said, for example, me and you, we were international students, and I like the threats on us, on our status here being a temporary status, is something, of course, it works up in everyone's mindset. But I think when you go back, for example, my entire preparation for the encampment, and obviously preparation to the genocide, and you see how every single one of us have such a rich history into what happened to bring us here. The first encampment I've ever been into, I was 7 years old, and it was the Arab Spring in Egypt, in Cairo. I was just 7. I remember one day, the only picture, which has even been like a public picture and stuff, it's a picture of me in Tahrir Square. And the one thing that nobody, I don't think I've ever said it to anyone, it's my picture in my school uniform. Because it was January, and my mother pulled me out of school one day, and it was basically when I got the green light from my father to join. And my mother pulled me out of school, and we said, "Yalla, like we're going to Tahrir." And I remember, obviously, this was my first experience of an encampment, and it was such a similar experience. Obviously, it was extremely different, extremely bigger. There was 100,000 people there. We were like hundreds of people in the encampment, but in Tahrir Square there were hundreds of thousands of people. But the idea is, and one of the things that I've seen there, which is an insane correlation, is that the community in Tahrir Square was something unparalleled. It was every facet of Egyptian society. People who don't agree with each other politically almost in anything. There's communists, there is liberals, there is like very political Muslim people. There's every facet of society you can imagine, right? Whenever someone would be walking, if someone's smoking a cigarette, they would instantly put it down, and like it would be a conscious thing that I want to make sure that even my cigarette or my smell don't bother anyone else. That obviously was such a small testament into the bigger kind of community. And then in 18 days, I remember on the 11th of February, when Mubarak stepped down, and I remember that moment as well. All of that is to say that like this was such a small kind of explanation to how was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala building me to that moment. The second encampment I've been in was Rabaa Square, which rather ended very, very differently with a massacre. But Rabaa was such a different experience because Rabaa was way more Muslim. Actually not way more Muslim, it was way more Islamic. Which, I mean, the difference in those things is insane, because Tahrir Square was way more Muslim as well. Yeah. But Rabaa was very much more Islamic. As I said, like, there was massacres happening in Rabaa. People predominantly remember the Rabaa massacre, but people forget that there was 2 other massacres that happened before that, in Manassa and Haras al-Mamhouri. And I witnessed some of those. And of course, I was in the country, it was insane. Like it's an insane thing to see. But obviously, all of this kind of was a good preparation to October 2023, when the genocide starts. And you understand that for the first kind of, especially because all of us, I would say, we knew about Gaza. It was not our first introduction to Gaza. And all the time, a war would happen to Gaza, a couple of thousand people would die, and then a ceasefire would happen. And right when you see the sheer awful atrocities, and the sheer awful killing and the massacres that would happen, and then out of nowhere, someone would go in the middle and be like, okay, ceasefire, everyone stops. And I remember in the first couple of weeks in after October, you were waiting for that moment to happen. It's like 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 5,000, 7,000. And your mind is like, oh my God, like, I feel extremely disgusted by myself, and I feel extremely helpless as well. Like, there's nothing I'm able to do. There's nothing I'm able to move past. And then, like, come on, someone's gotta stop this. Like, something's going to happen. Like, someone's gonna, come on.
And our brothers and sisters from Gaza are actually calling out to us.
Exactly.
Meanwhile.
Exactly. And you see the videos, literally, of exactly what you're saying, of people in front of their buildings after they destroy them saying, Ya Muslimin, Ya Arab, oh my God, Arabs, Muslims, please do something. Anyways, I think all of this was a very good preparation for me. I remember one of the most interesting things, I remember seeing on live television the 2016 Turkey coup. And you see the moment in which people go down to the streets, and you see the collective resistance that everyone displayed in one moment, in one night. People were standing in front of. When I used to Turkey, I used to live in Eyüp Sultan, and very nearby from where we live, there used to be like a memorial of I think it was an Audi car, like a fancy car. It's completely demolished and destroyed because a tank stepped on it, because they literally put it in front of the tank to stop the tanks from going in. All of this is, in my opinion, examples of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sets, and Tahrir Square was similar to that, Rabaa Square was similar to that, of Allah teaching you, it's that this is your training ground of the fact that when you genuinely believe in the cause, and when you stop thinking of what could stop you and start thinking of what could enable you, it comes to as literally putting your own car in front of a tank and being, no, it's not going to happen. And I think like all of this history kind of prepared me to when the genocide started. I was like, you know what, just responding to your earlier question, the questions about my status, the questions about, what can happen to my visa, all of this, it kept shrinking in size until the only thing that was for me to do is to just think that, you know what, if those people could do it before me, I can do it as well, even if I'm a 20-year-old man. That was how I ended up in the Hussein camp. But yeah.
And actually, like, taking our brothers and sisters as the examples, like the reference points, like the Palestinians who are going through this, then everything, all of those obstacles and threats and risks that you think that they're risks are just becoming so small, and so like small as they really are, let's say, that you can actually, you find the power to move. But was there like specific moment, let's say, kind of maybe like an awakening moment for you, or like how did you join the encampment?
For me, I think it was like when the genocide started, a big realization of, you know, the verse like Allah won't change the condition of a people until they change themselves. And I was thinking, okay, what have I done wrong as a Muslim even? That means that we're at a point where the Ummah is so weak that something like this can happen. Because at the end of the day, we all have a part to play in the Ummah. You're not separated from anyone. And it's, for me, that realization of, I need to fix my relationship with Allah. I need to become a better Muslim. Because look what's happening when you just decided to live life for your own comforts for this amount of time. And for me, it's like, I grew up going to like the protests that would happen every time there was an assault on Gaza, and kind of doing the little bits here and there that I thought was like, okay, I'm doing something kind of thing. And then in between those times when you'd have those ceasefires, just kind of forgetting and just living my own life and kind of figuring it out kind of thing, and living more for me rather than looking at like the bigger picture. So I think then when the genocide started, it's like, oh wow, like what have I done that means that we're in this place that this can happen and that it's only getting worse? And what am I going to do now to change it? Because I'm still alive, God's still giving me breath and still giving me a position where like I'm in this country, I'm not there, so there must be something that Allah wants from me that I can do in that situation kind of thing. And so from that point on, I remember it was a big kind of like spiritual awakening for me.
You know what's the most interesting thing you said? Is that, you remember with the line that you said, there's a reason I'm here and not there. I think like a lot of us, our idea becomes instantly that, I'm not there and I can't be there. Thus, it sounds like the extent of what can I do is that I'm not in Gaza. So I can make dua for them and I can boycott. That's literally the extent of what does it mean that I'm not there. Yeah. But I think this, subhanAllah, like this, and obviously you learn about a lot of the stories from, there's a beautiful story about Prophet ﷺ, when the Muslims have immigrated to Medina. There were some Muslims who either became Muslim after, or kind of, they were not able, they basically, in the process of them immigrating to Medina, they were arrested. And one of them is Abu Jandal. He's the brother of one of the great Sahabi, Abdullah ibn Sahil ibn Amr, and the son of another great Sahabi, Abdullah ibn Sahil ibn Amr, but he was not Muslim back then. And his father was one of the biggest leaders of Quraysh. And Abu Jandal basically is still in Mecca. And one of the interesting things that happens is the Prophet ﷺ does the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, in which it's written in the treaty that if someone came from Mecca without the agreement of their head, the Prophet ﷺ cannot accept him. So the problem is that if you're thinking about it in logical terms, it kind of locked the people in Mecca and where they are. But the Prophet ﷺ, one of them, Abu Basir, he came to the Prophet ﷺ, he ran away from Mecca. And he came to Prophet and told him, like, what do you want me to do? Like, I want to migrate to Medina, I want to be with the Muslims. And the Prophet said, look, you know, like I've done a treaty with the people. And to this point, Prophet kind of easily said, look, I'm not in Mecca. What do you want me to do? I've made a treaty, and I have been tortured in Mecca, and my family have been tortured in Mecca. Everyone I know have been tortured in Mecca. With all the love and respect, I'm not in Mecca. Good luck, guys. And inshallah, at one point we'll conquer Mecca, but right now there's nothing I can do for you. Right? I can make dua for you, and I'm the Prophet, so good luck. But it's not what he does. The Prophet ﷺ says to him that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to make for you and people like you an exit. And the Abu Basir starts telling the Prophet ﷺ, oh, what about if I do X, Y, and Z? He's trying to get the Prophet ﷺ to permit him to do it. The Prophet ﷺ basically gives him the response that, look, I'm not going to say to you yes, because it would be me going against the treaty that I have signed, but literally Prophet ﷺ, he would ask him, Prophet ﷺ would look the other way. So he took that as an implicit yes. And he goes out and basically he sets up a direct action group from the road to Mecca to the Levant. Because basically Mecca does it straight in the Levant. And he sets up a direct action group in the middle of this way and basically says, anywhere, I see any Quraysh trade shipment is coming, whenever they're shipping their weapons, whenever they're shipping their food, whenever they're shipping their clothes, I'm going to be in the middle of it. And I'm going to exercise my direct action, my will, into stopping these people from transporting this stuff up. And it's exactly what he does. He basically does it, and he does it in a such smart idea. Instead of basically being, he kind of makes a paramilitary organization of staying there and never moving. He basically said, it's a direct action group. We hit and go, we hit and go, we hit and go, we hit and go. So basically, they're transferring the stuff one day from Mecca to Damascus. So there's no worries, I know where's the route from Mecca to Damascus. And I'm gonna come somewhere along that route that you don't know, basically attack them, do the right kind of hit that I want, and then I run back, they can never find me again. They kept doing this to the point that Quraysh was like, okay, we need to figure out what we're gonna do with them. So they sit down and say, okay, how about this? We put out an army to fight them. So literally one of them said, wait, we're gonna fight ghosts. If you ever wanna fight them, they will choose the place that you fight them in, and you choose the time that they appear in. You cannot fight them, because they're not like, it's not that they're in a specific place. He's like, okay, we're gonna make our stuff more heavily armed then. He said, yeah, but it's not gonna make any benefit, because then you're paying double the security money and insane amount of costs to protect that, and it's not logical anymore. That means every single time we go, the idea of Quraysh being rich is that they're very mobile. They can go from point A to point B very fast. But you cannot do that anymore. Anyways, so they say, okay guys, there's one last thing we can do. To go to Muhammad and tell him, please take them back. We abandon that clause that we put in the Hudaybiyah Treaty. And all of this has happened from someone sitting in a direct action group and saying, you know what, I reject accepting the fact that I will be in between the way that they're giving their sustenance, that they're getting their weapons, that they're getting their food, that they're getting their merchandise. I will stop, I'll put my body in the way. And obviously, they later on become reunited with the Prophet ﷺ. And it's such a good example in telling us, because when you look, for example, at all of our Muslim countries, when you look at Egypt has a Suez Canal. Can we just deep the fact that literally the most important water passage in the world is in Egypt? What's the second most important water passage in the world? It's the Bosphorus passage. And it's in Turkey. It's literally between Istanbul. And you look at all of this and you understand that it's just, it gets us understanding that, okay, this is what we ought to do. And this is what the Prophet ﷺ did. This is what the Sahaba, the companions of the Prophet ﷺ did. And this is what Prophet ﷺ was a part of. And me being a Muslim is not an abstract word. It's a word that means I ought to be a continuation for Abu Basir and Abu Jandal and all of these people. And by the way, when you go to the Sahaba that did it, the brother of Khalid ibn Walid, Al-Walid ibn Walid ibn Mughira, was one of those people. Abu Jandal, the brother of Abdullah ibn Suhail ibn Amr, was one of those people that did it. So it's such a... And, for example, Abu Jahl's brothers were part of Salam ibn Hisham. All of us were part of those people. So it just makes you think in a different way about it.
So we were talking with the people that come by to the encampment, and we were having discussions with them, and you see that some people are feeling okay just to pray about it and maybe boycott and like what would you say to, like how would you, let's say, what would you say to a person that is not really see their reasons in terms of Islam?
I don't know, I think
because we have a very individualized sense of everything right now. Even our faith is very westernized, individualized.
To make you feel good.
To make you feel good if you are praying individually in your home and not moving a finger for your brother, for your sister. And I think this is also one of the things that kind of kept people, like this individualized version of Islam, kept people kind of in their places, which they do not take any risks.
It's very useful, but I can tell you, like, there's an interesting thing that you said, for example, which is, if you look at the last 2.5 years since the genocide started, or to be more precise, since the genocide heightened, you'd see that one of the things that really increased was boycott. And it's a great thing, of course. And I think it's one of the points that we have to just look a little bit more deeper into, right? When you speak about boycott, for example, inherently, why would you boycott something? Because you understand that you have a material contribution to the genocide, and also you have a material way to stop the genocide. The thing about the boycott is that it's your first pathway into understanding your agency. It's the fact that, you know what, I actually can control this. And you would never boycott if you don't think that you can control this. But the point is, with the instant gratification that the West have teach you to do, is like, oh, do just one thing, and don't look too deeply into it. Like, don't question why you're doing it. Just do it. Just boycott. That's it. And that's everything you need to do. Now you are a lovely human being and you can sleep just fine. And the interesting part of all of this is the fact that someone who's boycotting, that means that there's a part of their conscious that's awake. Because then they understand that they have a material contribution to the genocide, and then they want to stop the material contribution to the genocide, and they think their choices, even if it affects their comfort, is important to stop the genocide. Those same three options should make boycott a stepping stone for you. Should make it the first step out of multiple, because if you believe why did you boycott, it will be very easy to end up with the conclusion that I need to do like what Abu Basir done, right? And start putting my bodies in between the merchandise that's going to the occupation, for example, right? But the point here is, you need even to look deeply into why did you boycott? Did you boycott just because it was something to do at the time? Then you really, you didn't take any Islamic benefit from it. Because, as we know, actions are in intentions. If your intentions are corrupt, then it has no value. So my point is, if you really boycotted, because you genuinely believe that your material effort can help stop the genocide, and if you adopted that mentality, it would be so easy to see that there's so many next steps. And the next immediate step is, okay, let's stop the merchandise then. Let's go to the ports in which all of the spaces are being exported from, and let's say, you know what, this shouldn't happen. But you need, those things need to click. You cannot just boycott without any meaning, and you cannot stop at boycotting. You would only do that if you're doing this without any underlying intention.
Yeah. And I think as well, it's like understanding, it's like as a Muslim, it's like your life is for Allah, like your life is a form of worship, everything you do. So the idea that like what I meant by even me, I'm here and I'm not there, doesn't mean I can't do anything, but it means I have a life to give for something. That means there's more effort I can give. And for me, I think even watching the genocide makes you very kind of conscious of death and the realization that I was watching, you always think as a Muslim, I have to wait to be perfect to then have the perfect intention, the perfect heart, my salah is 100%, and then I'm going to do something, and then I'm allowed to do something. But for me, watching the genocide, it's you see people die, kids, old people, at different stages of life. No one is perfect at the moment when Allah takes them. And I think we have the completely wrong understanding that Allah's mercy is going to come to us from our actions, but it's all from our efforts. So then it's okay, what is the maximum effort I can do? And boycotting obviously is not the maximum effort we can do. And then it's looking, okay, what's next? What else can we do? And what more sacrifice can I do? And I think the more you go through this idea of sacrifice, the more you realize actually that you're the one who benefits the most from it. Even the encampment, initially it feels like a sacrifice. Okay, I don't know who's gonna be there, who I'm gonna meet, what's gonna how it's gonna unfold, the police is gonna come, literally I remember people were saying they had dreams of like the police was coming and like taking, like raiding the like tent and stuff. But again, we met like such an amazing community that made us stronger together as Muslims, and it's made us stronger as well in our activism. So I think it's like, the minute you take that step and you just say to Allah, like, yeah, I'm not perfect, I don't know what to do, but I'm just going to jump in and I'm just like, this is, like, for example, with the whole ports thing, I can recognize this country is contributing in this way, I'm a part of it, this is what I can do to kind of like rock the boat a bit, and then just like pray to Allah and like hope for the best. Then that's like that manifestation of your knowledge kind of thing, because like, again, your knowledge does not just stay in your head. Like how you measure it is what you're doing with it.
And that's a huge part, for example, into why have you stayed in prison for 15 months? Is because the British government had an insane reaction to part of the society, part of the active citizens thinking that, you know what, I don't think this is fine, and I cannot live while an arms factory is 2 hours away from me. I'm gonna go and take a principled stance against that. And then the state went on and just said, you know what, anyone who were there, or I believe were there, or I believe had anything to do with this, I deem all of them as criminals, and you need to stay for 2 years in prison. And that's like the idea that, subhanAllah, also there's examples of people doing this. There's an entire history of not only direct action in terms of it being a cool word, but Islamically, the Sahaba that we love and live by their seerah and their biographies, they have done that. But also, our brothers, who some of them even not Muslim, which is something that when you think about it, as Muslims, we should have so much more of a driving power to make us see. Like, one of the things that I could think about a lot is the fact that they know how a lot of people in the Muslim community have the idea of that. Look, we don't have a lot of things in our hand, and if what we can do is to make dua for them, then we make dua for them. And I think, subhanAllah, like, when you look at the Prophet ﷺ, right, didn't know, like, he knew that his ummah would face a lot of problems in the future. But do you think that he, 1400 years ago, said, whoever sees a wrong thing that you see in front of their eyes, the first thing to stop it with, he could have said 1,000 things. He said the first thing to stop it with is your hands. And one of the interesting things to go deeper into that hadith is the word istata'a in Arabic. Istata'a means was able to make themselves obey to do this. Right? The Prophet ﷺ says, whoever sees a wrong, stop it with your hand. Whoever is not able to make themselves obey, do the second thing, which is stop it with your voice. So look at how the Prophet ﷺ even uses his word choices. And we believe the Prophet ﷺ, like he didn't speak out of his own mind. He speaks from a divine wahy that comes to him. So the point is, look even at his choice of words, saying who he's not able to make himself obey, okay, do this then. And then he literally makes it up as a hierarchy. The first thing is with your hands. And we completely ignore this and we start looking, okay, I'm gonna have a platform and speak about things. And it's like, no. You forgot the priority. The first thing with your hands. And if you're not able to make yourself obedient to it, then you go to your voice, and you need to understand that this is a downgrade in your iman. And the least of iman is with your hearts. So, yeah.
And even on that point, it's like the idea of what does it mean to follow the Prophet's sunnah. Like, he has the hadith that the one who doesn't follow my sunnah is not one of me, right? And we take that like it's kind of the easier thing. Like, people become very strict in like the size of like their trousers, or like which foot you enter like the room with, all that kind of thing. And if you think we can be so precise about those little things, but there's people literally bleeding because you're spending money in this economy and you're existing in this country and like choosing your comforts in that way, where is the sunnah there? Like, you can't just choose what's convenient to you. And like, that's also, for me, the way that you really grow in your faith. It's not by sitting in a room and reading a book or reading the Quran, it's enacting the Quran. And like, I remember I was reading Ghazali, he says that people have made the study of the Quran the object of it, whereas the object of the Quran was to enact it, to be like the Prophet ﷺ, like a walking Quran. And I think that's something we have to really come back to, that this is our legacy as Muslims, like exactly like all the stories you're saying. This is not someone else's legacy, that we wait for someone else to do something. No, as Muslims, we are the front runners, we are the Khalifas on earth. Like, we want to be the ones that Allah is going to use to establish justice. And if it's not going to be us, it's going to be someone else. But where do you want to fall in that kind of thing? Because on the day of judgment, again, that's your ultimate aim, that's your ultimate judgment. Do you want to say I chose this comfort over that, like kind of truth, like even saving a life or attempting to save a life at least? Then that's up to you, kind of thing.
Do you know there's one of the Sahaba, his name is Talha ibn Ubaydullah, and he's one of the 10 people that was giving glad tidings of Jannah. And the most interesting thing of him is that he, whenever the day of Uhud would be mentioned, and people would say, هذا يوم طلحة. That was the day of Talha. It was the hardest time to resist. So to understand that it's your Muslim duty to stay and fight. Nobody saw this as logical, right? Or even if they saw it as logical, they were not able to bring themselves to do it. And Talha ibn Ubaydullah says, I'm not running away today. And basically he takes his horse and he runs to the midst of the enemy's heart. And he fights and fights and fights and fights and fights. And he doesn't die, doesn't get martyred. But to the point that when they came back, everyone always used to say, هذا يوم طلحة. That was the day of Talha. And the Talha used to be very proud of that. And the reason why this is so interesting is the fact that you see as a Sahabi that their most important moment almost was the fact that they have resisted and they have fought against those people when it was the hardest. When people knew it was right, but people didn't necessarily take the step. And the one thing that I want to bring it back to, which is something that we need to be way more aware of the Muslim community. When we stand here, it's not because we stand here because we're any of a special Muslim. Actually, I think one thing in common between all of us is that we didn't do the full extent of what we could have done. But the thing is, when we stand here, the one thing that I know the most of everything I've seen is that the fact that if you think there's something missing in you, to be able to do those big things, to be able to either stand in front of university and tell them that what you're doing, stand in front of an IDF soldier and tell him what you're doing is wrong, stand in front of this, that, or even stop the line of arms with your own hands. If you think you as a Muslim, you don't have enough skills, you don't have enough ability to do that, that's a crisis in faith for one reason. If you ever believed it was you, if you ever believed it was your hands that stopped it, then the Quran instantly contradicts you and says, it's not you who threw, it's Allah who threw. It's how it says in the Quran, fight them, Allah will punish them by your hands. So you understand that you as Muslim, it's not you, and it was never us. And nothing of what we have personally done, literally, and Allah is my ultimate witness. I don't say this for like the gratification for people to think, oh, I'm so selfish. I'm telling you, I've seen those things with my own eyes. And Allah is my witness. It was never me. It was not my hand who done all of this. It was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He chose a vehicle to one of His servants. At one point I was so grateful, alhamdulillah, that it was me. Another day it could be someone else. Another day it will be someone else. And the point is to understand that it will never be you. You are nothing, and with Allah you're something. That you alone are nothing. And when it clicks for you the fact that, you know what, I don't accept that. It's not about my abilities. Even if I'm very, very humble in abilities, it's not about my abilities. It's about the fact that we are something with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we are Muslims. We submit ourselves to Allah. And when I submit myself to Allah, I say to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I want to be your vehicle. Please use me. And when you accept that, Ya Rabb, inshallah, and if your intention is sincere, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you take the steps, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inshallah uses you. But this the idea is that you need to firstly, point A, believe that, you know what, it's not you at all. You don't need to have the good skills. You don't need to have the amazing, smartest mentality, because it will never be you. It will always be Allah, and you have to believe that it's going to be Allah. And point B, you have to believe that tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala means that you put your heart with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you take the physical steps. You go to those ports. You go to those passages. You go to the spaces where the occupation gets its goods from, and you say, you know what, I'm not going to let this happen. And you literally see the magic of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the beautiful act of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala using you in some way. If you go through that step, the most thing that I hope I will be able to tell my kids is the fact that, inshallah, Ya Rab, maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will use me in the future, or have used me in the past for His cause. And it ends there.
And it's also like reframing your idea of what's success, because even the idea about like risking the university like position there, is the success coming from the university degree, or is the true success coming when you're risking all of that? That's what you'll see on the Day of Judgment. That was what your university degree will count for. And it's like, the idea again, like we're trying to like always like reach certain heights or like reach certain comforts before we take any action, before we do anything. But like, is that really what's going to pay back in the year after? Like, I was recently watching a video of a man who went to fight during the Bosnian genocide, and he was like defending the Bosnians, and he was in his fourth year studying medicine in the UK, and he was being interviewed, and he's asking like, like why did you choose to give all that up to come here and defend your Muslim brothers and sisters? And he says, because I've seen all the Muslims back in the UK like who want to become doctors and engineers, and they say they're going to use their skills for good and for Allah, and then they graduate from university and they end up with like 50, 70k like a year job, and they've completely like forgotten all of that. And it's the idea this is not something you can delay, like in your faith and as your kind of duty as a Muslim, because again, also we don't know when we might die. Like we're obviously smart about how we work and what we're planning for, but you have to recognize as Muslims you're living on like borrowed time basically. Like if you die tomorrow, what are you going to say to Allah? Like there has to be that constant thing in the back of like your mind, and we're told that like the one who comes to Allah like with one atom of arrogance in them will not enter into Jannah. Like that's what it means, I think, for me. Like that's when everything started clicking. Okay, this is what it actually means to try and like kind of work on your heart and like discipline yourself, is to recognize, I'm truly like not worthy, I'm not something, or I'm not someone who, like because I'm so smart, I should be the one who's going to be like the professor of the ummah, and like I'm going to wait until I get my degree. Like no, that's not what it is. It's Allah's given you different tools and assets, and it's how you're going to use them now, and of course planning for the future. But there's an imminent genocide right now. What does that look like? If that was like, I think we also don't understand enough or internalize enough this idea that like the ummah is like one body. Like if you have like a bad arm or a broken arm, for example, you're not going to wait 10 years to like get the cast and try and fix it. You're going to do it now. So why are you waiting around?
It would feel urgent.
Exactly. And it's like, this is not like a joke at all, and life is not a joke. And like for me, I think even being like when I was in prison and stuff, that moment to have alone of really recognizing like death is something real, it's something that's really gonna happen. And like when you're truly alone with Allah, like what do you have to say to Him? And just to present some sort of case, not to say that I did anything, just I tried something and I pray that you accept it from me.
And that's an interesting one, because also when you look about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose to situate all of us, for example, we all met in London. And then literally, within less than a year of all of us meeting, you were in prison, they're trying to deport me, and you see all of these things, and you went into the flotilla, and all of those same things happen within the span of 1 year. And subhanAllah, when you think how out of nowhere Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala situated an Egyptian Muslim and a Pakistani Muslim and a Turkish Muslim in one place, made them meet each other and made them all go to different tests. A lot of times I'm just struck by the fact of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made us as Muslims, like He empowered us with so much power, potential inside of all of us. So for example, look at all of us, we were mostly in London. But as we said earlier, for example, when I look, and I lived in Turkey for about a year, and you think about how, for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala literally, I think it was Napoleon Bonaparte used to say, if the world had a capital, it would have been Istanbul. And you look at this place, right? It's if you have to put a finger in the middle of the entirety of the world, we've landed in this place. And everything, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put an insane Muslim population in the midst of the world, in the middle of where everything is happening. And then same thing with the Suez Canal, same thing even with the Gulf area, same thing with all of the spaces. It's in the middle of the heart of the world. Everything that has to happen in the world has to pass by the spaces. And you understand that, subhanAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gave the Zionists some power, a lot of power. But when you start fighting them, you understand that He gave us so much more. He literally put us in the middle of their throats. He literally gave us the opportunity that every single thing that they have to ever have passes by us. And you understand how much of for example, of the occupation's oil passes through Turkey. And you understand how much of their goods and weapons, etc., passes through the lands of the Muslims in Turkey. You understand that, subhanAllah? No, there is a purpose that we're having those conversations. There is a purpose that we speak to each other and we met each other. And that purpose is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling you, look, I've made all of you meet, I've made all of you see each other, and you all have your own communities. Maybe you need to work on the fact that you understand as Muslims, you being in Istanbul, I'm being Egyptian, all of this, that no, we have a potential to fulfill. And if Egypt stood to the occupation, if Istanbul and Turkey stood to the occupation, we'd be looking at a different, literally all of those enemies, we wouldn't be able to look at them at this power. And the thing is, a lot of times when we say this, we imagine that, okay, let's convince our leaders then. And it's not about convincing your leaders. Literally,
it's not about leaders.
It's not about leaders at all. And you understand, by the way, that, subhanAllah, أَيْنَمَا تَكُونُوا يُوَلَّ عَلَيْكُمْ. As you are, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will put your leaders off you as this thing. So, and it goes back to your earlier point of the fact, no. If you want to change something, change yourself first. So us as the people, we are those amount of powers. And the thing is, it doesn't take us being so creative. It just genuinely takes us saying, you know what? If there's an arms factory 5 hours away of where I live, I don't accept that this arms factory, and I will do everything in my power to make it out of office, out of business. And if there is a trade route in which the occupation gets its weapons and clothes and food, I will stop that trade route and I will do my best to isolate this apartheid genocidal regime. And it's not only that I'm going to do this alone, it's only I'm going to have to go found a fancy party, a fancy political party or a fancy political organization. No. I'm going to speak to my buddy that I speak with every day in a coffee shop. I'm going to speak to my best friend and my colleague at work, and I'm going to tell them, guys, all of us are human beings within our intuitive nature to not let this happen. Yalla, let's go. How about this? And I personally think this could be told as a dreaming story. But this is how we met, like, you know what I mean? Like, this is how we are sitting together at this table today. So.
And the irony is, again, in all of this, your oppressors bank on the fact that you're like mentally asleep. Because you look at even like all the arms factories and you see like the people who are being put on trial for going and disrupting the arms factories and like Elbit Systems in the UK, for example, they're all a bunch of kids. And you think, how did a bunch of kids get into the so-called Zionist entity that's this like sort of completely powerful and untouchable like entity as we imagine it, and they just went in and they just disrupted a bunch of weapons? How is that possible? You'd think they'd have security and all the rest of it. And I think again that's the idea that like I remember like there's a story that my mom used to tell me of like that during the time of the Mongols when the Muslims are being invaded and mentally they're in such like a weak state that like a Muslim would have like be standing with a sword and a Mongol would come to them and they would tell them, give me your sword so I can kill you, and they would give the sword to the Mongol to kill them. And I keep thinking like in a way now as Muslims it's like the Mongol doesn't even have to ask you, give me the sword. He just tells you, go kill your Muslim brother, and you do it.
Go for him.
And that's the thing, it's like being also in a position where we have this immense kind of like privilege to be able to disrupt these armed routes and these like sort of factories and that kind of thing. It's also a huge responsibility. Like it's not just something that almost we have a choice in. Like we think we have a choice, but it's that courage that's required that you have to take that, because that you will be asked about it. You don't get to sort of enjoy your comforts and like see that happening.
Do you know what's the interesting thing? I remember the times that we were like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put us in those places together, right? There's two memories that instantly come to mind that speaks about what you just said. One of the events that I have a lot of like alhamdulillah, like thankfulness for Allah that he has put me in. But the one time there was something called the London Defence Conference. It's basically sponsored by Palestine. And inside of it is BE Systems, Elbit Systems, every arms company you can imagine. And they invite to it the prime ministers of the world. So Keir Starmer was there, David Lammy at that time, he was the foreign secretary of the UK. He was there, ministers, leaders of the world, and army generals. Put them all in one place and basically utilize the university campus so the companies and the military leaders can sign contracts together and make military deals, basically. Anyways, and then one day, we're sitting together and we know that this is happening, right? We were in the encampment for the first time it happened. We try to protest it, we try to do as much as we can. It goes on and no more and nothing happens, right? And then the next year, they're doing it again in my university, in King's College London. So the second time, I'm like, okay, we still need to go and do something. Funny enough, the same day that it was happening it was the hearing of the suspension that they put me at the time for another protest. So I'm going that day, and it's already a hard day. Anyways, so we go, and we're at 8:30 in the morning. We just go to protest this, and in our minds, like the Prime Minister of the UK is happening. We've been told that the MI5 and the MI6 are securing the place because, come on guys, these people are on this, right? We go there, we protest the event, and we try to kind of do our best to stop it from happening, right? And we delay the speeches by, I think, by a fraction of a time, something like that. We protested the entire day, and it's like the 30 of us, right? Not like if I'm being honest with you, it's fewer than 30, right? We'll keep some hitting nature, but it's less than 30. Yes, we protested for the entire day, and then we go home, right? And the next day I wake up on a letter of suspension. So I'm like, for God's sake, like, come on. Anyways, later on, they basically do all of this entire things to suspend me and basically revoke my visa. All of that happens, right? And there's an insane amount of deals that used to happen in this conference. And then, literally a year later, the conference gets cancelled and doesn't happen anymore. And you think to yourself, it took 15, 20 people to make this happen. One of the other times I remember, and the funniest part about it was the fall of the Czech minister, the foreign minister of a NATO country, who's coming into UCL to basically lecture people about, oh my God, the Ukraine and how to fight off the oppressors. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destined for us to be there. And this is for us to protest against it. And literally it took us 15 minutes of telling this person, look, you're a war criminal, you need to be out of here. For him to go out of here. And then later on, remember the message the tweet that he put up on the advice of the British Secret Service? Yeah. I had to leave there. From literally about 4 kids. 4 kids. And it tells you, it takes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessing you to be there. But once you're there, as the Prophet says, they're like the spider web. It's the easiest thing to make it fall off. And it's that idea for us to understand that, I promise you, it's never, they're not as scary as they think. They're not as securitized as they think. You look, for example, at Fatima Zainab and Zoe Bond, and like, you look at how, literally a 19-year-old girls with a sledgehammer in the headquarters of the biggest Israeli weapons manufacturer in the world. And you understand that, no. Genuinely, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he said in the Quran, and a small people of you would beat a lot of them, bi'idhnillah, with the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you understand that it's not about the tactics. And it was never about that. It's not because we've done our protests in such a unique way. It's not because it's none of that. It's just the fact that you stand against oppression in the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told you. And you see Allah's my witness, the miracles that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes. I think that all of the stories of the Sahaba, they're not just stories. They're meant to be enacted upon.
And it speaks to the verse even, وَلَا تَخْشَوْهُمْ وَخْشَوْنِي, like, do not be scared of them, but like, be fear me kind of thing. Yeah. And it's like, we put so much of our like fears and things in human beings and what they can do to us.
And their system and their institutions.
But again, then, if we're going to put so much fear there, what about the fear for Allah? That He's going to question you, okay, look, I had literally dominion over everything, and I just asked you to try something, and then I would support you. What happens then? I think one of the other ways that a lot of times in the Muslim community, there's a lot of fear of like the consequences, and even throughout, even like, for example, my case or your case, there's a lot of this idea like we want to make an example out of you. Like putting me in prison for 15 months without trial is like make an example. Like don't you ever think like to ever do anything of what people are accused of and all this kind of thing. But at the end of the day, Allah used that time for me in prison to bring me closer to Him. And it made me like a better Muslim. So like, it's again, I remember when I was in prison, you would tell me the quote from Ibn Taymiyyah that what can my enemies do to me? My Jannah is in my heart. And it's the idea that the condition of the believer is like, fine, anytime if you're in difficulty, Allah will find a way out. If you're having a good time, Allah will bless you in it if you're grateful.
So when you saw all of what we saw in the UK, and the protests that we've been through and everything, when you came back to Turkey, how different of a reality was Turkey from the UK? What's the missing stuff? What's the stuff that you saw better in Turkey, or stuff that you saw worse? Like what was
I can't say if it's like, we can't really describe it as better or worse, I think, but one thing that is very clear, I think, to all of us maybe, is that we as Muslims are not aware of our power. Like, as you said, so like we are really somehow afraid of the systems that they created, or afraid of their powers, and we are like somehow like seeing this very powerful entity in front of us, and it's in a way that it makes us feel like we have genuinely nothing to do against them. And I think encampment was a perfect opportunity for all of us, that even, for example, a school which is, let's say, in the top 5 schools in the world, and which is a big institution, and you see and you experience from the first hand that they are actually afraid of what we can do to the university, to the system, and how much we can disrupt, how much we can actually demand from them, and how much we can actually get from them. Because we were initially demanding for them to cut their ties with the arm factories, like all the investments to weaponry and stuff. But I think when you're in like your own like hometown and your own settings, like you're not confronting with the enemy face to face. So you're always like with your own, you know, community, neighborhood, and somehow like you are brainwashed a bit in a way that we feel powerless, and we sometimes don't have places that we can actually discover that we have power. So encampment did that for me, and I felt like I discovered my power against against the oppressor. So I think like when I turned back to Turkey, that was the one thing that I, you know, realized, that people don't genuinely think that they have anything to do against this ongoing genocide. We are responsible for this. Then it means that we actually have power, because Allah wouldn't make us witness for nothing, right? Like we are witnessing everything, like 24/7. We know everything that's going on, and it is making us even more accountable, even more responsible. And it's just not because Allah wants us to feel very hopeless, and Allah wants us to just like stay where we are. Like this is not the reality. And I think sometimes in Muslim countries, in many Muslim countries, you grow up with that propaganda that their systems are unbreakable, their, you know, armies are the most strongest and things like that. But then we saw with every kind of people who are resisting, we saw that they are in fact very breakable concepts. So I think this is one of the most important things why people don't move. Like being self-colonized, you know, there's no hope that if you are self-colonized, like if someone is colonizing you, kind of like you are resisting to it, and you are feeling that, you know, disturbance. But if you are, you know, in your brain mentally, if you have so much barriers, if you are policing yourself on your own, then you are a lost case.
Do you know what's the interesting thing what you said? There is, I think, obviously one of the most unbelievable moments I've been in my life was, I think, 2 moments of like victory. Moment number 1 was 11th of February 2011, when Mubarak stepped down, and the second moment when Syria got liberated. The interesting thing is, once Mubarak fell down, everyone was incredibly shocked and surprised. Everyone thought in their mind that, oh, you know what, we want him to fall, inshallah he's gonna fall, right? But nobody ever thought that encamping in downtown Cairo for 18 days, he could only last 18 days. Nobody thought that the man who literally ruled Egypt for 30 years straight could just be demolished in 18 days. Nobody thought that was possible. And same with Syria and Bashar al-Assad and the Assad family. Nobody thought after almost more than 4 decades, just one day, literally it would take, I think the entire battle lasted 11 days. And I think the interesting part in all of these things is the fact that you understand that there's a beautiful quote that said, power resides where men believe it resides. Yeah. And it's that idea of that you would only attribute power to someone if you are subservient enough to them, if you are falling in your head to give them that power. But when you realize how in multiple examples in Muslim history, in which literally you see, even subhanAllah, like the most proud moments of us as Muslims is when we refuse to attribute power to our enemies. Do you remember like in 1453, even the conquest of Istanbul, and the fact that Muhammad al-Fatih said, you know what, they've literally put chains onto the sea and we couldn't care less, we're just going to sail the ships on land. Mm-hmm. And you understand that if you don't attribute power into them and you say, you know what, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala attributed gave them any form of power, then he gave me like them, if not more. And I'm destined to be victorious. And when you understand this and you start moving like it, as you said, like I remember one of the things that happened after the end of the UCL encampment is that the management of UCL, the 8th highest ranked university in the world, went to us and asked us, can we have an encampment, like a tent of yours, so we can put it in the museum of the university later on. And it makes you understand that, like, they know you're gonna win. You are the only oblivious person to the fact that you think you have no power. It's not only that, they are sure that you have some power to the point that they're waiting on you to win. So I think the thing is, even if we understood this, we never act like it. We never act like we are the people who are destined victory, and it's a matter of time. And I think the minute we connect this to this, the minute you have no chance, the moment that you've lost. And that's the beauty of all of the testimonies of Palestinian resistance. The Palestinian resistance always chose to ignore this. And whether that is in the West Bank or the occupied 48 lands or even Gaza, Palestinian resistance have consistently said, you know what, we believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us our own power, and we're going to try to challenge you because of this. And this is why the occupation has been trying to do all of this to the Gazans, because as you said, in the British state was trying to punish you for 15 months prison to make an example of you. The British education system was trying to punish me to make an example of me. And in a very bigger way, the occupation trying to punish the Gazans to tell everyone that, see, this is what can happen to you if you dare to do it. And snapping outside of this mentality is our true tribute to the martyrs. If we let this continue, then they've died for nothing. If we let this go on, then the martyrs have died for nothing.
Like also the idea of like as Muslims that we don't understand like our enemies are so like hell bent on like destroying Islam and like the community we come from that we don't realize what a gift we have already with us. And I think especially like from my experience going back to Pakistan, it's like because everyone's Muslim, you don't realize what an amazing thing it is to be Muslim. It's just like the norm kind of thing. So you don't question, okay, like what does my faith actually mean to me? And I think that's one thing that like if even in Gaza, like what we learned from them was this like the strength of their faith and how they dealt with the oppressors who were trying to make an example out of them, and instead Gaza made an example out of the oppressor.
Yeah. And I think we need just to understand that all of those things, and Imam al-Ghazali used to say this a lot, any form of knowledge that you've learned, insofar as it doesn't translate into action, it means nothing. And it's the worst thing because it's a proof against you in the day of judgment. To take all of this knowledge that we know into the point that, you know what, let's put our bodies where our mouth is.
Yeah, and it's exactly that. I think it's about looking at, you know, let's become the Muslims that we look up to from the past. Let's become those Sahaba that we hear stories about. These are not just, you know, stories we hear about as part of history. This is our legacy as Muslims. And like, let's just try our best to become even 1% of these people. And you know, it's like a very big shoes to fill, kind of this idea of wanting to live up to the example of Sahaba, but every single one of us have so many avenues and tools around us that we can tap into, no matter how small it may look. You know, if we're just taking the first step, you don't know where you'll end up by Allah's grace. And the world where at the end of the day, what does it mean to like be a Khalifa on earth? It means to establish justice. That we can be in a place where a Muslim can pray and worship Allah in peace, and where Muslims, non-Muslims, everyone is safeguarded. And I think that's something that we need to really aspire to, and not think that the Sahaba and their caliber and the kind of etiquette that they demonstrated is something that is unreachable.
And as you said, like we are given actually like countless tools, but we hear people asking like, and sometimes us ourselves asking like, what can I do? Like, okay, I'm seeing, I'm feeling, and I know this is my responsibility, but what can I do? But sometimes the answer is as easy as like you have a port that is being used for carrying Israeli weapons to Israel, like just 5 hours away from you. So I think we are sometimes like going around the answer and going around, and it is continuing for all our lives. Like it takes a lifetime, and after that there's no way back for us to fix things. It is a very beautiful thing when you notice that Allah is giving you many chances, options, and opportunities for you to be one of the khilafas on earth for him, to be in the service of him. And as I say, it's actually as easy as it is. Like we know about many things now, because in this information age, we know that our poets, sometimes countries, sometimes brands are being used, and we are the people who have access to all of these. So I think we can, at some point, we can just stop fooling ourselves and realize that yes, we have power, and yes, we have the means, and yes, there are things to do. And it is sometimes hard when no one around you is actually speaking this way, thinking this way. Everyone is saying how hopeless we are. But I think for every human being who is thinking, who is reading Quran, we are all responsible to see opportunities that are lying just next to us. And thank you for being with us today after your imprisonment and all of the things that is going with your education. This was a reunion for us after I left the UK. So thank you for being with us today and joining our series, Aktivizm Talks.